Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Monday's Wealth Creation Show. Now, today we are going to talk about the circle of influence. Now, the circle of influence is something that I first learned about when we both, well, Jim, you've read it a few times, I think, but we read the book Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and the circle of influence is in there. And I thought it was quite a good topic for us to talk about. Now, for those of you that don't know, the circle of influence is something that I think, do you know, and day to day, everybody worries, everybody has worries, and it's a kind of natural part of life and things. However, when people start to worry too much, it can become quite overwhelming, make it quite hard for people to move forward and progress in what they're doing, and that's where the circle of influence comes in handy. And we're going to try and talk about as much as we can today, and of course a lot of other things that will go with that. Jim, the circle of influence. Do you remember this from the book, Stephen Covey's book?
Probably not. and it's well, I wouldn't. It's primarily because I've read that many books since then. One I'm reading now actually is Legacy, by James Kerr, Legacy, which is about the All Blacks and how they're such a successful rugby team, and why the reason is that. So that's one of the ones I'm reading now. But yeah, I'll come back to this at some point, somewhere, at some point in time.
I know, well, yeah, but I think it's quite a good tool to use, especially when you're trying to not be overwhelmed and let all the day-to-day things kind of take over. And when you let go of all those things that you can't control, this is where the circle of influence comes in handy, because you can't control everything, and some people try and do that, and instead kind of shift your focus into the positive changes you could make into the things that you can change, and then you'll find yourself a lot more motivated and even physically healthier, and it's easier to learn about these things and by using the circle of influence method and how to use it to make your life happier and more productive. I think ultimately is probably the ultimate goal for most people. So then the question is, I think probably a lot of you ask, what is the circle of influence? So the circle of influence reference to everything that an individual can influence, but not necessarily control, as I said. So examples of that might include, we talk a lot about habits and habitual behaviour and things as well, skills and personal growth, and a lot of work-related matters and things as well in people's day-to-day jobs, your relationship, your personal relationships, your health, and just that immediate environment around any person, and the things that you could try and keep control of to make yourself a lot more productive and in a better state of mind. Any of this coming back to you, Jim?
Ask my question and I'll tell you the answer. That's effectively it. There's, it will come back to me when it comes to it. But
yeah, do you think it's important that you have a grasp on these things that you do have control of, like your habits and your own immediate personal environment around you? But now that could be the people you surround yourself with, the people you're in a relationship with. I mean, these are all things that can really have a profound effect on how you are in terms of your productivity, your actual physical health, your mental health.
I would absolutely agree. Mm-hmm. The people you surround yourself are the people that will help you influence where you're going to end up being. It's the old thing about you get like the people you associate with.
Yeah.
And we all had it when we were younger, where your mother used to say, "Don't hang around with them because it's going to rub off on you." And it's like, what are you talking about? Well, that's what it is, really, ultimately.
You fly with the crows, you get shot with them.
Yeah, you fly with the crows, you get shot with them as well. And that is absolutely right. And I think the circle of influence is you're a summation of the people round about you. So you want to get around, you really want to play this at a different level. You really want to get around people far more successful than you, that in order to help you move on. It's just like when a golfer goes out or an athlete goes out or somebody playing chess. Paul McDonald, who's a really great chess player, said to me, you always want to play somebody better than you. Don't worry if you get beat all the time, but you'll learn more by getting beat all the time than you will actually winning all the time. So you want to play somebody that's better than you, because that will help you raise your game, as in golf, as in athletics, as in estate agency, as in property investment, as in wealth creation, as in anything in life. You want to get around people more successful than you. That's what it's down to. And then they'll help you raise your game up to their level. And then once you get to their level, you're going to have to get around other people more successful than them again. Again, that's that same scenario. And that's how you end up with two people starting out at the same point in life. We're all born at an early age from zero. And then how do we all then become different? And how do some people become extremely successful? And how do some people fail miserably? It is a lot to do with the surroundings and the environment you're born into, but also how you allow that to shape who you are and who you become.
Yeah, it definitely has a profound influence on you, the people around you, and from a very early age, and then right through into adulthood as well. Do you know, people that you've associated with for certain periods of your life, you'll tend to find as you grow, you think you outgrow them, and you realise that they're not the right group of people to be around. Now, I know obviously family and things, and that's different because your family is your family, but it doesn't mean you need to let them completely influence who you are and how you succeed in life or don't succeed in life due to their influence.
Yeah, they're your family and they're connected to you by blood, but that doesn't mean to say you've got to be. You'll actually agree with everything they say. You'll actually be. You'll get on with each other all the time. All these different things. You're really only just connected by blood and the fact that you're part of the same family. It doesn't mean to say you've got to listen to that person and take their advice on anything unless they've actually done it themselves. If you're going to take advice from someone, make damn sure you've got somebody that actually you're going to take advice from. It's actually gone through the same thing as you've gone through, but they actually know the path out of there. They know the path to success and whatever that is, whether it's relationships, whether it's failure, whether it's wealth building, whatever it is. Whether it's learning to dive, which I'm doing, running.
Yeah, you were doing that.
Learn from somebody that's extremely successful at running. Whether it's all these different people. This is why I count on Diary of a CEO quite a lot, because I know Stephen Bartlett actually vets all these people, and now they're fact checking everything that these people it's coming out of their mouth. So when I look at one of these episodes, I make sure that it's going to be something I'm going to learn something from, and something it's someone that's more successful than me in that field. That's the only criteria. Why would you then want to learn from something or someone that has nothing to do with what you're actually trying to learn?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think you see about obviously learning for the right people, and you're saying you've used the example of diving and things, and you've turned to a lot of professionals in the field to give you the best advice on how to do that properly. And it's interesting you see about Stephen Bartlett vetting all these people. Do you think he's been a lot more meticulous about vetting the facts that he's got from guests, because he's got such a big audience now? He's got such a big audience and platform now.
I actually identified this maybe about 6 months ago or 9 months ago, where I put in the comments he had someone on talking about Ozempic and how miraculous this drug was. And they had no background or medical background in Ozempic. They had no idea. They just know it worked for them. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, you've got somebody on here saying something like, I actually wrote it in the comments, you've got somebody on here saying something like these comments, and this isn't even fully tested, really. They've rolled it out, but now they know and they realise now that Ozempic, after 2 years, you're goosed. You ruin your body.
Yeah.
That's a medical fact.
That's quite concerning.
That person was on saying that this is the wonder drug and all the rest of it. And these people actually didn't, as a result, they've done some serious damage to themselves.
Yeah. So that's something you really need to be careful, especially when you're promoting something that could have a detrimental effect to somebody's health, and ultimately, God, worst case scenario,
like this.
Yeah.
In the comment somewhere, and we've actually said, look, we're no financial advisors. This is just our opinion. It's like you can take it or leave it, but it's worked for me.
Yeah, I mean, we are quite clear on the fact that we're not financial advisors. We're not rolling this out as like, this is what you need to do. I mean, this is basically, if you want to listen and implement things, then great. We do also use quite good sources of information. Like today, we are taking like the circle of influences from Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And that has proved to be very helpful to a lot of people over the years. And what I did do actually for today, just because I thought I'm going to talk about the circle of influence and circle of control and things, and people are going to be like, what are you talking about? So I've actually just got a quick diagram here, just to kind of give you a visual. I'm quite a visual learner as well, so I think it's quite handy sometimes to do that as well, and you'll see that quite clearly on the screen. And in the middle of this is the circle of influence. On the outer of the circle of control, and then on the even outer of that, you've got the circle of concern. Now, the circle of concern and the circle of control are the outer and inner rings of this circle of influence, and they can provide insight into where you should focus your time and energy and attention, on things that you can control and things that you're influenced by. So I think it's good to always have a visual aid when you're talking about these kinds of things, because it's not always straightforward to put it across just in words.
So let me ask you a question then. How do you use that for your benefit then?
So I think when we think about the circle of influence, and I think you need to think about the things that you have in your control, and the habits and habits that I've tried to implement over the years are things that I have full control over. Not that you always stick to them, but you do have control over your habitual habits and things as well. What you don't is obviously the things that are influencing you, but you do have control of where you place yourself to allow these things that influence you, if that makes sense. And that's when we come down to the people that surround you and the people that you're taking advice from, or letting influence you and your actions and what you're trying to do. And that has a really big effect.
Do we have control of our habits, or do our habits have control of us? Think about that.
Well, it would depend on how you look at it, because I think if you've got a really disciplined approach to your habits that you implement, then you do have quite a lot of control over that. But then there's other habits that possibly you do without even knowing them. So then you don't have a lot of control about that, because you're subconsciously doing things without realizing it. So I think you need to take a step back. Yeah, I think you need to take a step back.
Here's one habit that everybody does.
Why am I doing it? Yeah.
And it's brush their teeth. They brush their teeth with their right hand. They're more than likely they use the right hand to brush their teeth.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of habits, but there is also habits that people don't have control over. OCD.
Yeah.
Do they have control, or do they not have control? Or do they choose not to have control?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot. It depends what perspective you look at, but I think things like OCD and people that have these impulses to do things without even realizing it, unless you're aware of that, then you don't have control over that.
Absolutely, and Marx says it quite astutely. And Aristotle's quote, which is, "We are repeatedly what we do in excellence." Therefore, excellence is not is not an act, but it's simply a habit. And I could kind of agree with that. Mm-hmm. Excellence is a form of habits, and it's what you do all the time will eventually make you succeed. Classic example is, if you want to train for a marathon, you're not going to get off the couch straight away and just run 26 miles. You're going to have to be quite habitual in your routine in order to get that to that point where you're actually capable of running a marathon. And it's the same with anything else. It's the same way if you want to train to be an experienced diver. Balance is a really good one. Buoyancy is a definite one you have to master when you're under the water. And I went under the water yesterday. I got to the reef. And because I didn't have the right buoyancy, I just went down and down and down 20 meters. And while my ears were pushing in, and I didn't have a chance to equalize, so I had to then press the buoyancy control device to put me back up, but then it blows air in, and then you're speeding back up again. So you've kind of got to have that mastered before you actually get in there, and it is a process. And everybody that starts diving for the first time will experience buoyancy control issues when they're in the water. But schoolboy error, I should have checked it before I even got off of that reef when I went down, because then I wouldn't have gone down. I would have just floated. And it would have been fine. I would have stayed exactly where I was.
There's a lot of control involved in doing diving, and if you're not in control, it could be quite it could be one wrong decision could be fatal, to be honest, when you're in that kind of situation.
Yeah.
Max has made another good point about, he says, I've actually got quite bad OCD, and it's a tough question and a hard thing to contend with. But the fact that you've identified you do have OCD, and you've obviously identified that that's something that you need to deal with, that's part of the part of control, I would say.
Well, if your doctor diagnoses you with OCD, or your psychologist or whatever, then there is ways and means in order to come through that, and that's why you listen to them. Some people just refuse to listen to them, and they think they don't know what they're talking about. But in actual fact, they're there to help. That's the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
So it's difficult in order to do that. OCD. I've not been prescribed it. I don't have it as far as I'm aware. I've no doubt at some point in time I would probably find out if I did. But I've not been, I've not been diagnosed with anything or anything like that. I just know by repetition, like Tony Robbins says, repetition is the mother of all skill. The more you repeat, and the more you repeat a successful formula and a successful pattern, the easier it is to do, and the quicker you can get there, and the quicker you can attain success in whatever you're doing. Hence the reason why when I knew the blueprint for property investment, I just duplicated it every single time, and then I started to scale it and actually buy more units all at the same time as a result. And it was just the same process. I think for me, the circle of influence, just learning from the people that have gone before me, and knowing what they know. The majority of them actually said, if I was going to do it all again, I'd spend the same amount of time on bigger projects. I'd think bigger. I think that's what the message has always come out. If I was going to do the same again, I would just think a lot better, a lot bigger next time, and I would do bigger things. It's just in the beginning, you're just terrified to do that. I'm talking about that to Ian today. We were walking up the high street and people opening businesses for the first time. And I think, God, it's bound to be quite difficult opening a business. I don't remember what that was like, to be honest. That was a long time ago for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good. It's quite daunting opening a business. You've got you don't even know if anybody's ever going to walk in the door. You've not trialed anything. And for people to take a chance and just open what is a cafe or a coffee shop. I mean, coffee shops are 10 a penny when you think about it. There's a lot of people open them. What differentiates you from the rest of the crowd so you will stand out? So somebody will actually say to themselves, I want to use that person. This is the difference between brand loyalty and brand insistence. If you don't have brand loyalty or brand insistence, then you're constantly fighting for business every single time. You want to generate something like a brand loyalty and then brand insistence. Brand loyalty is if someone's in the area and you've got you serve that area, they will probably come to you because that's the choice that they would have. That's their loyalty. Brand insistence is far better, because brand insistence means if they're in the area but you're not in the area, they will actually travel to use your product.
Yeah. Rather than use one closer to them.
Yeah. I mean, look at here's a really classic example of this. If you don't have a McDonald's in your town, do you travel to the McDonald's?
I don't eat McDonald's anymore.
Most people do. Most people do, and most people have done. They will travel. Starbucks is good for that. For me, Indian food, Mother India in Edinburgh is a beautiful. The food quality is absolutely out of this world. Mother India in Edinburgh. Mother India in Glasgow.
Not as good.
Not as good. Not as good, and yet it's the same company. But it just shows you. So I'm quite brand insistent. So when I want Indian food and I'm going out, it's easy just to nip over to Edinburgh and have a day out or an afternoon out or something like that and go to Mother India at the same time. So when I go there, it's a lot to do with loyalty, but it's also to do with insistence sometimes.
Yeah. It's true what you say there about, and it's just doing those little things that set you apart from everybody else that's trying to do the same thing. And you spoke about coffee shops to start with, and in our local area, there's one, and I know you like it, Jim, as well. It's Hannarella, and do you know I was in there, and the girl that runs it, and we both know her, but what set her apart is we were talking to her, and she's like, "Oh, I roast all my own coffee." She says, "I do it all, and I do this," and she explained to me. She gave me a jar of it to take away with me, and then she let me, and I bought a few cakes, and she gave me a few to try as well, and I just thought that just sets you completely apart from anybody else.
Yeah, it does. However, is it duplicatable?
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah.
Can someone else do it?
But no one else is doing it like that.
Yeah. So you have to have it when you've got something and you're doing anything. You've got to have a USP, a unique selling point, something that no one else does.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is what sets you apart from everyone else. No one can duplicate what you do because they don't know what it is you do.
Mm-hmm.
That's the clear classic example. In the early days, coffee shops are great examples. The duplicatable businesses were Costa. That's a huge upcoming. That brand rose hugely in the very beginning. Yeah. Starbucks was another one, but then these two big brands were actually taken over eventually by corporate. McDonald's, and I think the other one was Coca-Cola.
Mm-hmm.
So they were taken over, and then all of a sudden the brand started to degrade a wee bit. Right. The shine came off it. Now we've got Black Sheep coffee on the horizon, which is appearing everywhere, and it seems to be the new coffee shop of choice for a lot of people. Yeah. The Black Sheep coffee company. So that's another. So it's easy when people lose their way. Other people step in and steal their thunder, and they do what they did in the beginning. A lot of people start out in the very beginning, and they start out with the great intentions, and it's like what you say. Oh, we're the best coffee roaster, we do all our own and all the rest of it. But as they get bigger and they scale, what happens is that then gets lost in translation. It begins, it's not duplicatable because it's unique to one person.
Yeah, because that revolves around her, obviously. Yeah.
And then that relies on the whole system running around that one person. Whereas if you try to scale, you have to get people of your similar mindset and your similar enthusiasm to scale with you.
And do and replicate what you've been doing. Yeah.
Yes, it's it's not easy to get people. No. It's not easy to get a person to answer a phone who's a traditional 9 to 5 employee at 10 o'clock at night because someone's pipes burst in their house as an emergency and do something about it. It's not easy for estate agents, 9 to 5 estate agents, for example, to answer the phone at 8 o'clock at night for somebody that wants a valuation and then get back to them. It's not easy for that to happen. So you have to have something in place in order to actually be able to do that. Or the people themselves are enthusiastic enough in order they want to do that because that is in their DNA. And by what I mean is in their DNA, if you, like a stick of rock, if you cut someone open, what have they got written right around? Yeah. Have they got lazy or have they got, I'm going to do what it takes written in there? Like the stick of rock, and that's the difference. Do they just do a 9 to 5, or are they and they'll just get a 9 to 5 salary, and they'll just be a paid employee for the rest of their life, and they'll probably never amount to anything unless they do the Dave Ramsey approach and they just put away money every single time and build wealth over a long-term period of time, and they don't do anything else. They'll be very successful in that. I've known people in the past. I've heard of people like a janitor in Buckhaven eventually retired and they ended up being a millionaire.
You had yeah.
No one knew a janitor.
It's been squirreling it.
And it's purely for the fact that he invested in penny stocks from the very, very beginning. At the very beginning of his savings at the beginning. Now, it's a bit of a sad story, leaving over £1 million, especially at that time, because I think that was maybe 30 years ago or more. That's
a lot of money. Yeah.
That's a lot of money today, if you cross that up and inflation-wise.
Inflation, yeah.
So it just shows you straight away how when we come back to a circle of influence, you're a product of the environment you and the people you associate with and round about you, and they will be the people that actually make you who you are.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you've got generations and generations of people on the dole. Think about it.
Yeah.
They teach each other. They teach the next generation exactly what they should be doing just by their actions or their non-actions. They don't, and they don't, and they just like, and they think that's normal to do. And yeah, that is normal in their world, but nobody's there to influence them or help them or let them see a different life. Some of them break out. Some of them realize it's like, flipping heck, I'm not going to do this for the rest of my life. I'm not going to sit and do nothing. I want something more. And that is the difference. That's what it's all about. It's about people who choose to step out and want to do something better for them and for the other people they're associated with, for their community, for their family, for their, for themselves. That's kind of, and they'll get, if you build the dream big enough, the facts won't count when it comes into situations like that. And they will seek out the right people and gravitate towards the right people in order to help them. Some of them might not be the right people. They might just look like the right person. The smoke and mirrors, snake oil salesman or saleswoman, if we want to say it like that. These type of people, might actually they might actually not see that, but don't let that deter you if you get caught out by that person. Don't let that deter you. Just find another person. Find another person that will help you every single time.
Yeah, you said there about obviously these generations and generations of people doing the same thing, and then people then stepping out because they realise I don't have to do this. Do you know? And it's like you don't have to be conditioned just to do the same thing. You have the control, because I want to talk about control now, and I think they're in control of their own destiny and they could change that. I did want to just jump in because Marx is joining us here. He's in the comments from, you're in property management in California, Marx. Thanks for joining us. And the goal is just like welfare. You're right. Yeah, that's what we're referring to. But yeah, I was going to talk about control and how the circle of influence and things is all about possibly accepting the things that you can't control and really pushing forward with the things in your life that you can control, and being quite acceptant of the things that you can't control and realizing what they are. I think that's a really important point. And if you've got real control of the main points of your life, and you could push forward with that, you'll obtain that really sense of, empowerment and things within yourself and your own journey. Do you agree with that, Jim?
Control's got a lot to do with it. If people do feel out of control, then they feel less likely and they feel more anxious and more anxiety.
Yeah.
Classic example. We're talking about property management. We're talking about a state agency, for example. When somebody puts their house on the market or put their house up for let, and they are not the person in charge of either finding the buyer or finding the tenant, then for some people it's quite difficult to accept the fact that someone else takes control of that. That makes some people extremely nervous, extremely anxious. I know that recently for someone that actually, one of my friends' daughter actually was selling their house over on the West Coast.
Okay.
And she experienced that, and he was asking me for advice, and I'm like, so how long you been on? And it's like, well, a week. What? A week, and they're anxious already. See but then that's a lot to do with managing expectations. But then it's a lot to do with the fact that you've not gone through that already in your life, so you don't realize that it's like this is just normal. Probably a really good example of that is I remember as a financial controller when I was in industry and manufacturing. My first experience that I used to get letters all the time from the companies that sold us stuff, our suppliers. I used to get letters every single month from them saying your outstanding balance is due by this date or else. And I used to be very anxious about that and really have high anxiety about that. And then after a period of time, I realized it's like, wait a minute, this is a computer that's spewing this out. It's just normal practice. This is just normal day-to-day stuff. This is just what they do. A computer spews it out because they tell them to, and you get these letters all the time. So it's not actually physically a person saying you're due this money. It's just a process. And 99 times out of 100, I just binned everything every single month. It's like, no, I'll pay you when you agreed to me. I got the goods on that date, and your system's obviously wrong, and I'm due you the money on that date. not the date that you're saying in your system, because they wanted to advanced invoice it in order for their figures to look good. But then that makes it difficult for us, and that spews out a letter from their system who says that we're overdue, and we're not overdue. But in the beginning, because you didn't have that experience, and you didn't have that control of that system, you felt very vulnerable and you felt anxious about the whole thing. But then once you learn by the experience and wisdom that this is just a system spewing it out, it's like, so what? It's like people come to me and say, if you don't do that, we will do this or else. And I'm like what? What are you going to do? What are you actually going to do? And then it's like silence at the other end of the phone. What are you going to do? Nothing. Because I know damn fine you can't do a damn thing.
Yeah, because these types of letters and phone calls that can, like you say, put a real sense of anxiety and pressure on people. And in reality, if you were to follow through it, it's not as bad as you really think it is. But you think you're totally out of control, and
these are skills that they don't teach in school. These are vital skills that they should be teaching in school. They should be teaching skills and how to handle these situations in real-time situations. The teachers should become more vocational in how they do things. I don't know if that is done, but I don't see any evidence it's done. And I mean by vocational, the teachers potentially should be teachers that have been involved in that particular field, and not just in an academic case, but also in a practical, applicable case. You know, they've actually done what they've done. For example, when I went to college and I was taught accountancy, and I've taught business studies, we were taught by people who had actually been in that industry. Yeah, they'd been in there. That's vocational training. That's people. And then also you would maybe get an insight into how someone's business works as well. And I used to, well, obviously before podcasts and that, I used to love going around local businesses and finding out how they work and asking them all these questions. It's a bit weird. It's like, you know, I used to float my boat. I used to love going around a local business and finding out all about them. And I used to phone them up sometimes and say, any chance I can get a wee guided tour of your plant? And folk were like, really? Who is this? And it's like, I'm just in college. It's like, I'm just learning things. It's like, can I come along? And okay then. I think everybody was a bit bemused about the fact that why would anybody want to come and see what we do? I just like.
But then I think it's been proven that kind of inquisitive approach and asking lots of questions is such a good way to learn. And even if it's from something that's not directly relevant to what you're trying to do, the skills and things that you pick up for different people and how they do things is invaluable, really, to a certain extent.
The transferable skills from profession to profession, if you've got the basic fundamentals right, they're highly desirable. You make yourself a really attractive proposition to someone else. Your value is created by how much people want you and demand. That's it, ultimately. I'm going to be controversial. Like, let's look at lady footballers. I've heard in the past, it's like, I'm not saying it's everybody, so didn't get your pitchforks and your torches out and go on about it. But what I'm saying to it is, let's look at lady footballers. I was watching I caught a glimpse of the semi-final Scottish Cup the week, Glasgow City against Motherwell. I'm sure they're brilliant. But there is a call now and again where some people and that the lady footballers will go, why are we not getting paid what the men are getting paid? But then you looked around Hampden and it was literally empty. There was no one there. There's no one paying money to get that. Whereas you have the same with the guys and they're playing football. You look around Hampden and it's mobbed. People are paying hundreds of pounds a ticket. That's why they're getting paid a fortune. It's got nothing to do with their skill. I'm sure both of them have maybe even the same skill level on occasion, but it's not the skill you're getting paid for. You're getting paid for the fact of the audience you attract.
The crowds that you're drawing in.
People will pay money to see what you do or use your product. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I was going to talk about making positive changes and things as well. And when you go back to this, like when you're receiving these kind of notices for payments and things as well, but when you change your mindset on that, it really puts you right back in the driver's seat, and you reclaim the power, because then you realize that the future problems are not going to be as overwhelming as they were, as you previously thought they were, in terms of like you're going to get a bill later if you're working in whatever company, that it's not as pressing as it really originally was to you, because you've realized, right, okay, and then put yourself back in it, and that puts you into the driver's seat of the power position. So and it means that you're not letting things take over your mind that really aren't relevant, because that could set you right off track in terms of what your goals or what you're trying to achieve.
You get caught into you end up working on the coalface rather than actually, directing people to what they should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge issue when that happens, because then you're no longer running a business, you're working in the business rather than on the business. You're not giving people the direction they need in order to do their job effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it becomes fatal, because then everything revolves around you and the direction that you're going. And so basically what you're doing is you're running from the front on that occasion, and everybody's running behind you, trying to sweep up at the same time. That's what
pushing everyone forward.
Whereas what you should be doing is you'd be going, right, okay, I am here. You go over there and do that. You go over there and do that. You go there and do that. You go there and do that. And I will do this. And we will bring that all together, and it will fit into this big jigsaw, and eventually it'll work perfectly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and in theory, and that's how it should work. And a lot of people will find that difficult, whereas especially if you're running a business and managing people, to position yourself in the right position rather than be too involved in the day-to-day run-ins of things, rather than, like you say, pushing things forward and everybody else and directing where people should be in order for everything to work. I mean, it's easier said than done, but it's definitely achievable. You just need to have the right mindset of where you should be and where you need everybody else in the team to be.
I think it's easier done than said.
Okay.
It's like by the time you said it, you could have done it.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because sometimes we spoke about this a few shows ago, and it's like you go over things and over things and over things, and you don't actually put them in. It was a call to action, actually. We've just done it, and it's like you don't actually action these things, and it's all talk and no action.
Nothing. You could read every single book in the world. You could learn from the most astute teachers, the most educated people in the world, the most successful business people in the world. But unless you actually do something with that information and put it into action, nothing's going to happen. All you've done is learn what they did, but you're actually not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, I've gone in the past and I've trained to do certain things, and then I've eventually never used them. I've never needed them.
But did you learn something from the process, regardless?
I learned I should have done it. I learned I shouldn't have done it. That's it. Right. I learned I shouldn't have done it in the first place. I wasted my time. So the next time that comes along, I go, resist the urge, Jim. You know fine. It's not relevant to what you do. I know you like doing it. I know it floats your boat, but don't do it and don't get involved.
Mm-hmm.
And that's ultimately mastery. That's what sets you apart from other people. You know when you're not meant to do something and someone else should be doing it as a result, and not you doing it for them all the time. Because then effectively you're just doing their job.
Yeah, you're just doing it for them, yeah.
A classic example of that is the unions. I remember years and years ago, the unions used to get really annoyed when the government used to come up with great ideas about, instead of people being paid welfare, like Marx had said, or the dole, let's get them out in the street in the winter, and they could sweep the streets with the full of the snow. And they were like, and the unions used to get really annoyed. It's like, whoa, wait a minute, you're taking a job away from a guy that is getting paid for this.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to watch what you're doing in certain situations. I don't know where I was going there, but it just reminded me of that sort of thing. It's like, it's all very well you can go and do it, but then are you stepping on someone else's toes?
Yeah, and then that upsets the balance of, do you know what, I'll have a knock-on effect.
The knock-on effect is they're either going to shape up or ship out.
Mm-hmm.
That's the knock-on effect. Because the reality is, they know fine that you're having to do it all for them all the time, and why are they there then if that's the case?
Yeah,
because you're taking control.
Yeah, I think without having that control in any environment, and not having the control and allowing things to totally overwhelm you, and you know, if you're not delegating, if you're not considering things on the right level and letting them take over your mind space, it could really start to have a detrimental effect on your mental state as well. Do you know, if you're totally stressed and overstretched and everything revolves around you. If you're trying to run a business, that's a slippery slope in terms of your mental health. So taking back control and having less worry and stress is such a big, an important part of being successful, because if you are feeling overwhelmed and stressed and it's having an effect on you, it'll hold you back. I mean, Jim, you've experienced it in the past and you've shared with us before. Do you know the troubles you had and had to work through? And once you come out the other end of that, we're able to be a lot more successful because you weren't letting it have an effect on you so much.
I find it quite interesting when people always talk about their mental health and other and what they say nowadays. And I'm going to take a pretty draconian view about this.
Uh-huh.
It's what did people do in 20, 30, 40 years ago?
I know. I've thought about that often because, I mean, people would just have to get on with it.
They just got on with it and did it.
Yeah, I know.
And but nowadays we tend to have a talking shop where everybody talks about how bad it is for them and how their mental well-being and their mental health and all the rest of it is how difficult for them. It's like, well, maybe just do it then and just get it over with and get it done. I don't know. It's interesting how it's evolved. It's kind of like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
When you look at the first need, is the need for survival. It's just survival and that's it. And it kind of reflects society and the fact that at war times, which was over 100 years ago, over 100 years ago now, in war times, World War One, World War Two, people just wanted, people just needed to survive and eat. That was it. That was the two things: survive and eat, and just stay alive. Now we've evolved into 100 years later. We've evolved into a society where it's taken for granted.
Yeah.
It's taken for granted completely. And the generation that's been born now, which is Gen X, is it? So
yeah,
is it
yeah,
Gen X?
We're in Gen X, yeah.
Whatever. The generation that's now. We tend to look back at them now and think to themselves, God, they've flipping got it so easy. And they're going, oh, it's so difficult. My mental health, my well-being. And it's like, and they're going, what are you talking about? and it's that difficulty of, we've made it so easy for you. You need they need something else to grasp onto to make it their cause. I was talking to Ian about this today, actually. It's like each generation has to jump onto something to take charge of it and make it them, to almost feel like they've left something or they've changed something, even if it's for the sake of change. I mean, our generation was all about it was like, I will represent myself, I will be myself. It was punk, it was mod, it was the government's not going to stand on me, they're not going to hold me down. I have got, I've got a right to where I am and all the rest of it. And that's why the punk movement, the mod movement, and the heavy metal and all these different things, they all embraced that. And you had the 60s, you had the protest songs, you had Bob Dylan and people like that. You had all these people. They all latched onto something, and there's no surprise we've got it today. But it's just in a different form. But it's the same sort of thing, isn't it?
It is the same sort of approach, and you're right. And for generation to generation, it changes slightly, but it's still the same mindset of people.
I think that's a control thing.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think the reason that is here is because people need to grasp onto something to feel they're in control of their life. It's a human trait. It's like, if you don't feel you're in control, what else does that leave you? Into oblivion.
Mm-hmm.
So people, I think generally as humans, we need to feel in some sort of control of our lives. We are making the decisions, even though we know fine that someone else is making the decisions for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We just like to think we're making the right decisions for ourselves. People, you see it all over social media. That's why people argue with each other over the same thing.
Over the silliest things.
It's crazy. A spelling mistake. It's like, or even, I mean, that's the worst, eh? People just want to jump on other people for spelling mistakes. It's like, is that all you've got in your life to do? It's like, have it out with somebody else over a spelling mistake. Who cares?
Yeah, some of the things that I read on social media are quite trivial, and then it made into such a big thing. And I just think, what a waste of time. It really is.
To them, it's important. To them, to the people that actually go on about it, it's important because it makes them feel in control.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And even if it's a negative experience that makes them feel in control, they're still in control.
It still gives them that satisfaction that they've demonstrated they're in control and they know what they're doing.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's why they'll fight. That's why they'll fight to the bitter end and keep going on and on and on and on. That's what happened. They just want to be in control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's quite an interesting view on it, to be honest. And yeah, I would agree. But yeah, so mental health is important. I have to say, we're not discrediting it at all. We're just saying that there's a kind of different version and approach to it nowadays than there was in the past. But your mental health things is important. Just think about what level you're at and why you're feeling in certain ways and things as well.
If your mental health, if you're concerned about your mental health, go and speak to someone. It's a professional practitioner about it. Mm-hmm. Don't self-diagnose.
No, or speak to Facebook.
Aye, Facebook's no the greatest place. It's like, oh, you're all right, hun, and it's like flipping heck. That's not the place to get, because that just encourages you to be worse at what you are, because then you get attention. You don't realise you're doing it. You get attention as a result of it, and then you end up being worse because your mind goes, oh, I'm getting attention here. Being in this situation, being in this dire situation I'm in just now, it's like, if I'm getting attention, this is good. I like this, because it ticks the wee, dopamine, the dopamine hit. Yeah. That's what for people that are less educated in that field and don't understand that, they don't realize that's what's manipulating them.
Yeah, definitely. But well, when we double back to this, obviously the circle of influence and control, and having that control and having the right influences in your life can really help you develop a growth mindset, and that's a really positive thing to have, is to have that optimistic outlook on things and really let yourself grow and move forward. And when you look at your different challenges and things as opportunities as opposed to obstacles, and you have that growth versus that in comparison to these uncontrollable struggles and things, it could really help you develop a healthy mindset and push you forward in your productivity to achieve your goals and have a successful business and whatever you're trying to do in terms of your wealth creation journey, basically. So reframing like obstacles and things and making them into stepping stones for your success, and that could be a real driver and motivator, rather than looking at obstacles as things that you can't get past and letting them overwhelm you. So that growth mindset is a really important thing to be able to have. And again, if you're struggling to do that, speak to the right people, have the right people influencing you on how to obtain a really healthy growth mindset. Do you agree with that, Jim?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then obviously your growth mindset, when I say look at things as opposed to obstacles as opportunities, then it opens you up to a lot of new opportunities. because your circle and your influences will have people encouraging you to focus on what you can control rather than what you can't control. And then that allows you to really invest a lot of energy into your goals, your opportunities, it could be your academic achievements that you're trying to do, it could be your career, it could be your relationship with your significant other or your family, and build on these kinds of relationships. And all of this goes hand in hand with being successful in life, basically. And I think we relate this to obviously building a business or creating your wealth and things, but I think if you're successful in life in general, it will have that knock-on effect throughout anything that you try to do within your life because you're in the right kind of mindset.
You would
Does that make sense?
but
Yeah.
but please remember that you can't control someone else. You can only control your own actions and yourself.
Yeah.
And if you try to control someone else, it's not going to end up the right way. You can manage someone else. That's not the same thing as control. So you can manage them. That's clearly what you'd want to do. And
as long as they're willing to be managed.
Eh?
As long as they're willing to be managed.
Well, if they don't want to be managed, then they shouldn't be there. If that's the case, it's like, well, why a job, for example? It's like if you don't want to be managed by someone else, your boss, for example, then what are you there for then? That's the whole point of that infrastructure and that hierarchy structure, in order to make sure the entity, the business itself, and they are part of that entity, actually works in synergy with each other. Each part of that entity works in synergy in order to produce the best result. That's ultimately what that's for. But by continually trying to control what people do, you're on a hiding to nothing. You manage them. If you don't, and if they don't want to play, then why are they there? As I said, what is the point?
Yeah, and that is a really good point. And I think if you are managing people and they're not willing to take your lead or take your advice or listen to, if you're trying to delegate and things, then that might be a question you need to ask them. Why are you here if you're not willing to take the lead, to take my lead? So yeah,
I've asked that question quite a few times in the past.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's start to round up this show today. And I think when we think about the bottom line of what we're trying to explain today and talk through, that as I said at the beginning, it's natural to worry about things, and everybody does that. And it's natural to worry about things that you can't control, especially when they have an impact on you, and whether that's your mental health or your business or, but if you've got this focus and you use this circle of influence, it can really motivate you to take, positive actions and let go of those, kind of those heavy emotions that really tend to bog people down. You can't really push through that. You just need to have a positive action plan, I think, is probably the best way to put that. So that's probably what I think the essence of what I think the circle of influence could do for you, and what I was trying to get across this morning anyway. This afternoon, should I say?
Absolutely.
And I think key takeaways for today. I mean, the circle of influence can really help individuals identify where they can't control. That's one thing. Focusing on your circle of influence can really start to empower you and help you make those positive changes. And you could expand your circle of influence by identifying the concerns that you have and improving your skills, whether it's re-educating or learning from other people, and then focusing on how you could address things that you found as a challenge or an obstacle previously. And once you learn how to get through that and don't see it as an obstacle, it puts you right back in the driver's seat and realigns that power that you have by being in the driver's seat and not letting things take over. I think
most people's circle of influence is the pub.
Yeah, I know.
That's effectively it, because you said it right there when your key takeaway, which is help individuals identify what they can and can't control. And that's typically the conversation that happens over a drink down at the pub for a lot of people. And the difficulty out of that is, what do you do with the people that don't drink? I don't like being about pubs. That's why you probably have to have other support groups in order. And I don't mean support groups as in, you've got to have a doctor, you've got to have this. I mean, just generally, just people round about you that you know that you can trust, and people that potentially might not judge you, but they might give you a different perspective or a different view on life as opposed to how you see it. But they won't judge you as a result of it, so they're non-judgmental. That type of person. These people are quite good for you. That's why you've got the advent of things like Andy's Man Club and stuff like that as well. Over, because that's a non-judgmental thing, and that's just for people to help each other in their own sort of support group. So that in its basic form is kind of a circle of influence for people in these particular situations.
Yeah, an important thing there, and it just made me think about when you're talking about letting people give you a different perspective on what you maybe believe or think. In order to do that and take it on board, and it might not be right, it might, but you really have to have an open mind and listen to people. And if people are trying to give you advice, to listen to it, have an open mind, but also be careful that it's the right advice for you. Do you know? Because it might not always be.
Well, again, remember, maybe reframe that word advice and just say opinion.
Opinion, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Because remember, advice is, when people give you advice, there's an expectation from both parties that you should take it. Whereas if you reframe that and say it's someone's opinion, you don't necessarily need to take on board their opinion. You can consider it as an option, but you don't necessarily need to take that on board and actually implement it, if that makes sense. It's one of the things I've learned from Keith Cunningham, definitely, where he says, hey, you don't need to listen to me. You don't need to take on board anything that I say. This is only my opinion. And that's exactly what we say in here. This is only our opinions.
Yeah.
It's not our advice. That's a different thing. So if you're in the same sort of vein, or if that's helped you, then fantastic. If it's not, then I'm not Jim Parker.
Yeah, I think, but for me, definitely, I think that when you're trying to make changes and make positive changes and things, or I think it's always important to look at your immediate environment and the immediate influences around you, i.e., people or things that are influencing you, or what you do on a daily basis, and sometimes without even thinking, because these are all the things that will have an effect on how you operate. And if you're trying to make changes and make positive changes and get somewhere, these are the things you need to look at, and they could be right in front of you and you don't even know it. Yeah. Okay, right, we'll round it up there. That was a good show. Thanks for all your insights, Jim, and thanks for everybody joining in the comments. Thanks, Max, for joining us for California. I don't know if you dropped off halfway through, but there will be a time difference. But as usual, we will be back next Monday at 12:30. If this is a rerun, you could also jump in the comments and we'll come back to you when we can. And thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Jim.